Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another episode of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, Felony Friday is a show, the only show, I think, that every single episode we focus on exposing stories of injustice in this nation's broken criminal justice system. Felony Fridays is one of three shows that we have here on Lions of Liberty. We kick off every single week with our Monday show hosted by Mark Clare. It's our longest running show, our flagship program. I think we're approaching 5 years of that show, of that Monday show. And the content on that show, Mark interviews leaders in the Liberty movement, and he hosts roundtable discussions as well. Every Wednesday, we have our show hosted by Brian McWilliams. It is called Electric Liberty Land. It's an entertaining look at culture, comedy, and liberty. Brian's doing a phenomenal job with that show right there. You can get all three of these shows, of the variety show that is the Lions of Liberty podcast, by subscribing to one feed, the Lions of Liberty podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, or TuneIn. Any of those are a great way to subscribe and get these great shows delivered to your phone first thing in the morning, so you never, ever miss an episode. So please be sure to do that. Today's episode, this is an episode with a recovering addict, someone who has spent significant time tied up in the criminal justice system, and now is a business owner. It's a great story, and you're going to love this episode. You can find all the show notes at lionsofliberty.com/FF136, because this is the 136th episode of Felony Friday. Let's get to today's interview. My guest today on Felony Friday is Keith Bauer. Keith was born in Florida. He started using drugs at a young age and was first arrested at the age of 15 for drug possession. Over the years, he moved around quite a bit, and he was in and out of jail and in and out of rehab. Keith now has been sober for almost 5 years, and he started his own business. He actually started the business while living in a recovery house. We'll definitely be going into that aspect of his story. And with Keith's business, he employs both recovering addicts and alcoholics. Keith, welcome to Felony Friday.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. And you were recommended by former guest on the show, Chris Streisbach. He connected us, so I'm thankful for Chris for doing that. First, to introduce you and for the Felony Friday audience to get to know really your story a little bit better, I want to go through the whole thing, but let's start really at the beginning. And I mentioned in your intro there that you had your first run-in with the law when you were 15 years old. So leading up to that, what was your childhood like? What was your life like growing up?
I mean, I can't honestly say what normal is. It was normal to me in my childhood. I grew up in a home in Florida with my mother and my father, and I have two sisters. My grandparents lived very close, about 5 miles away. So we were always hanging out. There was a lot of love. I didn't come from like a broken home or anything like that. I usually say there's nothing that you can really point to in my childhood that is the reason you can say this is why this man used drugs and alcohol. Like you said in the intro there, I did start using drugs, or as I like to say, experimenting with drugs at a early age. I had a good friend of mine, had some older siblings, and I don't know if it was wanted to be like them or wanted to fit in, but whatever it was, they showed us the ropes, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that was in about 6th grade. Started experimenting with marijuana, alcohol, and then progressed into prescription pills. And it was all just kind of, in my eyes at that point from the inside looking out, just a normal childhood. People around me, the kids around me were experimenting as well. It wasn't until I turned 15. I was 15 years old when I had my first brush with the law. And I guess it was a little bit more than a brush with the law, as I got picked up for possession of a controlled substance, like I said, at the age of 15. And I was kicked out of school. So what they did was I had a court date, obviously, like that happens. And at the court date, they gave me a plea deal, which I took. My family thought I should take because we really didn't know any better, honestly. They offered me 3 years of probation. And as a kid, I thought 3 years of probation is fine. You know, it's better than what I thought I'd be going to, which would be like a maximum state penitentiary at the age of 15.
Right.
But I took 3 years of probation. And like I said, not knowing any better, I can remember some of the terms and conditions of my probation at 15, where I had to stay alcohol and drug free. Makes sense. I had to do some classes about drugs and alcohol, random drug tests, and then I had a curfew of 6 p.m., which was a little rough for being that young.
It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah.
A little bit, right? So, I mean, needless to say, it didn't matter if the probation was 3 years or 3 weeks. At 15 years old, I wasn't going to abide by all that stuff.
What was, just to go back, so it was drug possession. What was the drug?
It was Xanax.
Okay.
So I was carrying that. I actually had it at school. So I got picked up in school with that, and that's why I was kicked out of school. So like I said, put on probation for 3 years, which, you know, I violated multiple times. And at that time, they told me I needed to go to what they call the juvenile program. This was a 6-month program where I was incarcerated with other juveniles for breaking all kinds of various laws. And, you know, I served the full 6 months. I turned 16 while I was in there. They had some drug classes that I had to take while I was in there, which at that point in my life, you know, I didn't pay any attention because I didn't feel I had a problem. You know, at that point, my excuse always was, you know, I can stop if I want to, I just don't want to. And I believed that at that time. So that's where I was.
So at what age? I am starting to get some feedback now. I'm starting to hear myself. You know, maybe the easiest thing to do, I'll edit this stuff out, obviously. If you just can turn down my volume as low as possible, you can still hear me. So if you just go to, or yeah, you know how to do that. Just turn down as low as you can just still hear me, but it's not that.
That's where I can hear you still.
Good. Okay, cool. So just to backtrack a little bit. Or wait, I already asked that question. What was I going to ask? Lost my train of thought. The heck was I talking about? Do you remember what I said before?
No, I was talking about being in the juvenile program and taking classes in there and getting kicked out of school.
Okay. Trying to think how to tee this back up. I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, I remember what I was going to say. So at what point let me start that over. So, Keith, at what point did you realize you're talking about you thought you were just experimenting like the other kids with drugs? At what point did you realize that you did have a problem?
Not at that age, not at that time. Although like everything around me seemed to be crumbling, relationships with my family, didn't really have any, real friends, and didn't associate with any reputable people, just bad living. I still didn't think I had a problem. I couldn't see like past it at that point. I was just, I can say that the benefits of using drugs and alcohol to escape were at that point in my life outweighing the consequences.
Okay. So you have this first 3 years of probation. You were violating it several times, right? So what happened next? Did you get picked up again for drug possession, or?
Well, after violating the probation, that's when I went to the 6-month program. I got out of there, still on probation. And I did violate a couple times But then I turned 18. So they released me from juvenile probation. I wasn't carried over to adult probation. It was just kind of like, you're on your own now. You're an adult. Go and try to be a successful member of society.
Yeah, no, they don't give you any form of rehab or anything like that. Just, you're an adult now. Just go ahead.
That's what it was for me. And that was my experience. And that was, again, in Florida, But, yeah, like you said, there was no treatment. There was no follow-up classes once they terminated my probation. So I continued to go on about my life as I was,
So did you graduate high school?
I actually, you know what? When I got out of the program, I actually did get my GED. I didn't graduate high school. I was kicked out, like I said, about ninth grade. So I got my GED.
And so you're 18. You're out of the program. Where do you go from there?
Where I go from there, that is, I met a woman down in Florida who was from Pennsylvania, Chester County, and she was down in Florida trying to get sober, actually, and we linked up, and it didn't go very well. But she came to me and she said, look, I'm not from here. I want to move back to Pennsylvania. And I told her, well, you know what? Florida is clearly my problem. Everybody here doesn't like me. The cops know my name. I've never been to Pennsylvania. Let's go together. So that's how I ended up in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I moved to PA, and actually moving here we had this like thought of, we're going to get sober together and we're going to try to live a successful life, which didn't work immediately. Something really cool did happen though when I moved here. About a year after moving here, we had a son. So my son was born. Now, in my eyes and in my mind, this is what I was waiting for. I was waiting for a reason to stop the cycle that I had been going through, to stop using drugs, to stop going to jail, to stop going to rehab. And having a child was it. As much as I wanted it to be, it unfortunately wasn't. I could say that through my life, the amount of time that I was using drugs and alcohol, I had tried to quit on my own plenty of times. I tried every maintenance program, I'm only gonna, drink occasionally and all that stuff. Any other drug addicts or alcoholics know exactly what I'm talking about. But it didn't work. I ended up taking care of my son for a couple years, and then some old charges caught back up with me, and I got to visit my first Pennsylvania jail, which not too different from Florida. However, the one thing that I did experience, which is I just remember this, due to overcrowding. Now my charges are all nonviolent charges. Mm-hmm. They're possession, they are thefts, stuff like that, all things I was doing to support my habit, right? And due to overcrowding, apparently, I got sent to a maximum security block in the jail, which was horrible, honestly. I was in an area with real hardcore criminals, which I was not. They were all talking about like what they had done, some pretty bad things, and the question comes up, hey, what did you do? And all these big, tough guys are asking these questions, and what am I going to say? Oh, I'm in this jail because I had drugs in my pocket. I'm in this jail because I stole some money so that I could put drugs in my pocket. It didn't feel right, honestly. I didn't get like any. I just think honestly, like, I went to jail for all these drug charges. It's obvious that I have a problem with drugs, and there was nothing to help me in the jail, So again, I got out.
Did you still have, while you were in jail, did you have access to drugs?
Yeah, actually there was access to drugs. We smoked cigarettes and did some drugs and stuff like that, even though it was all banned. But,
mm-hmm. I mean, that's a common thing I hear, is that it's, you would think, and that's another example of why prohibition obviously doesn't work. I mean, you have a jail, you would think one area where they could keep drugs out of, you can't even do that.
Exactly. So, I don't know, just to go on a little bit, like here, another monumental moment in my life is getting out of that jail. Like I said, there was no classes, nothing to prepare me to release me back into society as someone with a clear problem. Mm-hmm. So again, I relapse almost instantaneous from getting out, and at this point, the family is around, and, I lose my son out of my life, which was a very tough thing for me, but again, it didn't shake me to the core. It didn't, there wasn't, the moment of, hey, this is it, man, cool off, I'd end up, violating the probation that I was on. And I actually had a probation officer this time who told me I could go to treatment instead of going to jail, which was actually not the first time I had heard this, and it wasn't my first treatment facility. Mm-hmm. But previous in my life, like anytime a probation officer would tell me that, I would obviously choose to go to treatment. And then being in treatment, I wouldn't really pay attention. I wouldn't really listen. They could have helped. I'm sure they would have helped. But all I heard when a probation officer told me is, you can go to treatment instead of going to jail, was go to treatment and you don't have to go to jail. So, right. But something really cool happened this time, right? I went to this treatment center, and when I was getting released, they released me to a halfway house. Okay. Now, going to the treatment center and going to the halfway house, I did maintain some sobriety for I think about 6 months at this point, but it wasn't the treatment center that kept me sober. What it did actually was it introduced me to something that I didn't even know existed. Mm-hmm. And that was a whole community of people trying to recover. And that was a changing moment in my life. That is not the moment I got sober. But it opened a door, which, like I said, I didn't even know existed.
Because you were just surrounded by people who were going through the same struggle as you. You could relate to them.
Yes, exactly. People just like me, going through the same exact things, trying to, most of them actually where I wanted to be, which was living, clean, sober, happy lives. Mm-hmm. So those are the guys I latched onto for a few months before I got my old, so I still hold on to some ideas and had some things, and, had other things in my mind that were what I thought to be more important in my life than maintaining sobriety. So I ended up slipping there, and I fell off, and, I stayed away from those people for about 3 years of my life, and I continued to get into trouble. Again, arrested on some nonviolent charges, and,
Did you have any, what was your employment situation during this whole period?
My friends joked about it, because when I got sober almost 5.5 years ago, they'd all say, well, what are you good at? What have you done before? And it's like, I have no resume. I have no resume, because nothing it could go on a resume is worth putting on there. Everything was like a week of work at like Boston Market, or, I worked at the giant grocery store for a couple months. Mm-hmm. Or my employment history usually went like this. I'd show up to my first day of work. I'd work for about a half a day. I would leave. And then I'd come back like 2 weeks later and be like, somebody owes me $63. That's what my employment history was. I just spent most of my time like supporting my habit.
Mm-hmm. So You said that you met these guys when you were in that halfway house, then you left and you went back to old habits.
Mhm.
What happened from there? And did something eventually click, or what was it that really sent you down a path to recovery?
Like I said, going to that halfway house and meeting those people was a pivotal point in my life. I stayed away from those people for about 3 years. I ended up calling my family back in Florida because I had nowhere else to go. I was kicked out of anywhere that would even think about letting me stay over, or anyone would think about letting me stay over. And I called my family down in Florida. And I actually told them that I was doing well. And they're 1,500 miles away. What do they know, So they wanted to believe I was, so they allowed me to come back, and they let me stay in their house. So I moved back to Florida, 29 years old, living in my mother and father's house. And I'll tell you what, man, I went there with all the intentions in the world to stay sober. I wanted to be a good son. I wanted to be a good brother. I wanted to learn how to be a good father. But that's not the case. I went down there and I just continued the same old habits, and it's that cycle that we hear being talked about, and I was stuck in it until the point I came home one day, and my mother and father called me into the room. We all sat at the table, and they, mom's crying those same tears that she'd always cried, and she said, you have to go. I said, well, Mom, I left at a young age. I know where to go and what to do. And she said, no, you have to leave Florida. And I was a little taken back, John, because I've never been kicked out of a state before. So, I said, what am I going to say? She said, we'll drive you to the airport tomorrow. And they did. And I got back on a plane and I came back to Pennsylvania. I stayed in a few shelters. I stayed in some strangers' homes.
Just to go back for a minute, I'm curious. Do you know what the reasoning was why your parents thought it was better for you to leave the state of Florida? Or
they could clearly see what I was into. Mm-hmm. They could clearly see what I was bringing into their home. They could clearly see things starting to disappear from their own home, and that's the cycle, But I got back on a plane. I came back to Pennsylvania. Like I said, I ended up staying with strangers and in shelters. And then it got to the point where I was living in Philadelphia. And my last recollection, and this is right before I went to my last treatment center and got sober, I was sleeping on a tile floor with no sheets, no pillows or anything, curled up in a corner because it was, March. And I said, something's got to change. I got to do something. I got to at least go to treatment again. People were telling me to go to treatment again. I declined many a times because I had been there. I had done that. What am I going to hear that I hadn't heard before? But I got in. I got into a treatment center, and I detoxed from the drugs, and I went to the groups. And then I had a counselor who asked me what I wanted to do next. And, I told her the same thing that I told every other counselor before, and that is, I'm okay. I have a place to go, a safe place to go. I'm just going to go home. But in reality, John, I didn't have a home. And she didn't know any better because she didn't really know me for more than a couple of weeks, because that's all I could get funded for at that point. And so she said, okay. And then, I don't know why, but I left her office, and then I came back to her office, and I knocked on the door, and I said, listen, I don't have a home to go to. And she said, come on in. And this woman listened to me, and she talked to me, and she didn't actually one time tell me what I have to do, which was different, And she said, what do you want to do? And I told her, I said, listen, back in Lancaster County a couple of years ago, I met some guys. Some of them these guys were all doing, what I want to be doing. They're all living good lives. One of them owns a recovery house. I've never, really lived in a recovery house, but I'd like to give them a call. And she said, okay, well, recovery houses cost money. Do you have any money? And I laughed and I said, no, I have negative dollars. I don't have any money at all. She said, well, what do you want to do? I said, let me just give him a phone call. So I gave the guy a phone call. He answers the phone. He didn't remember me right away, but as soon as I explained to him who I was and how he knew me and where he knew me from, his tone and his voice and his demeanor just absolutely changed. He was like so happy to hear from me, which was something I don't really get that. Wasn't getting that often at that point in my life. And I told him where I was and what was going on. And I said, I didn't have any money, but if there's any way he could let me into a house, I would pay him back. I promised. And he said, is your counselor there? And she was on speakerphone. And he said, call me the day before he gets out. We definitely have a bed for him. And that was amazing to me, that somebody would welcome me in with open arms, without a dollar, wanting nothing from me. And, I entered that house in May of 2013. And I lived there. I lived in that recovery house for some time. I got a job at it took me forever, but I finally found a job. And I got a job at a factory, literally 5 minutes from the house walking, because I didn't have a vehicle. Mm-hmm. And it was a horrible job. There was no heat. There was no air conditioning. You manufactured metal buckets. That's what I did for a living for a year. And it was just torture, really. But I did it. I woke up every day and I went to work and I did it because I really had no other option. Mm-hmm. I'm managing this guy's recovery house, and a buddy of mine lives in the house, and he was looking for a new line of work. And he said, we should start a business. I said, listen, man, I've only been sober for about a year. I have zero job experience. I know nothing about running a business. And the owner of that recovery house, he said, hey, man, I'll help you guys out a little bit. And he helped us get started. And, that was like 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And, today I'm co-owner of a New Life Kitchens and Baths, which is amazing, incredible, and just baffling to me at the same time. And it all just started from, being given a chance, which is pretty cool, I think.
That is really cool. So take us through, you have this, or your friend and you have this idea to start this business. The guy who owns the recovery house helps out a little bit. How did you get from point A, the idea, to point B, to actually starting the business?
It all happened so fast. I wish I could break it down and give you the blueprint, but just willingness, honestly, willingness to do something greater than us. We were two recovering drug addicts, and we just started marketing. We just started marketing, saying, it's a small, at the time it was the beginning, it was a small painting and repair company. So we were going to do painting and small repairs. And then people would, have us come into their home to do some painting, and they would say, hey, I need new cabinets, or I need new flooring. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And, from going from a small painting and repair company, needing more help. So hiring other recovering drug addicts and alcoholics and giving them a chance, like somebody gave us, is what we did. And we've grown from that small painting and repair company to a fairly successful, I would say, company with 3 divisions. We have a general contracting division, we have a kitchen and bath design and build division, and we have the painting division as well. So that's kind of where it is now.
That's great. And this is all in really 4 years or 5 years that you've.
This is about 4 years.
That's incredible. So what do you attribute that entrepreneurial success to? You didn't have a background in really entrepreneurship. Do you think that you're sort of just a natural, and you just kind of hit that point where your work ethic just took over, or what do you attribute it to?
I'd like to say, I would like to say that it comes naturally to me and I just have a mind for business. But I don't think that's 100% true. I listen to a lot of people that are where I want to be. And I keep a lot of good people close to me who give me direction, who can say, hey, Keith, this might not be the right thing to do, even in life and in business. And I take direction. And there's also definitely a no quit attitude, a refusal to fail, And oddly enough, the more that I try to help others around me and hiring recovering drug addicts and alcoholics, the work just keeps piling in. We don't really fight for it. So, strong believer, if you do well, good things come back to you. So
that's really cool. This is a great ending, and you have a lot of great things ahead of you too. But kind of looking back on what you went through, struggling with addiction, and spending time in the criminal justice system, and really that being another hurdle that was put in front of you that didn't help you, right? So, in your opinion, what way or what sort of policies would you like to see put in place at either the state level or local level that could help somebody that was on a similar path to you to get to or to expedite to where you are now, where you can own a business and add value to society?
Well, as you said in the beginning, you talked to Chris Dreisbach, who's a good friend of mine. We were hanging out earlier today. And a lot of the things that guy's trying to do and that his company Blueprints is trying to do is the jumping off point. Informing police, the people who come in contact with the addicts and alcoholics, usually first on how to handle the situation is a great jumping off point. Decriminalizing things as best we can, I think, is a great idea. As far as the criminal justice system and all that, I really don't know. I do, however, wish when it comes to starting a business and jumping right into that, I wish someone would have told me about the immense taxes the government was going to be hitting me with on a yearly basis. It's a bit almost criminal, if you ask me.
Yeah,
but
it is criminal. It is criminal. I would
think some people might agree. So.
Yeah, I'm a libertarian. This is a libertarian show. Each of our shows on this podcast network are a little different, but we're all libertarians. Libertarians say taxation is theft. At the end of the day, it is theft, because if you don't pay it, you don't pay your taxes, you don't pay your tax bill, someone's going to come to your house from the government. They're going to come to your house with a gun, and if you don't give them money, they're going to take you away. So they are stealing money from you at gunpoint, ultimately. But
that is a true statement, to say the least.
But that's the society we live in, so we have to deal with that at this point and work through the political process to hopefully change that eventually and reduce it as much as we can. But that's why we do shows like this and talk about people like yourself who have, who are really creating, adding value to society through entrepreneurship, setting that example. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about, just give some advice or offer any words of wisdom to maybe somebody out there who's watching or listening, who maybe they themselves are struggling with addiction, or maybe they know someone, have a loved one who is struggling with addiction. Any words of wisdom for those people?
Well, in closing, I don't think I would be doing my job if I didn't say, if anybody wants to help support our company, A New Life Kitchens and Baths, we do ship our cabinets nationwide. You can contact me at 717-287-6968. But I think more importantly, if there's anybody who's struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, or anybody that knows anybody struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, and they think, they're at their bottom, or they think, things are just getting worse, and they think that nothing's ever going to get better, I promise you there is hope. And if you need to reach out or you need to be pointed in the right direction, please do not hesitate to contact me at that number that I just gave you, or I'm sure John would love it if you contact him as well, and we can definitely put you in touch with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. People can reach out to me through my show's email, felonyfriday@lionsofliberty.com. I can connect you with Keith, or any of my former guests would be happy to talk to you as well. And I'll definitely link to A New Life Kitchen and Bath, and link to you have a website, I'm sure, too.
Yes.
I'll link to the website and put the phone number there for that stuff. And just want to thank you, Keith, for coming on the show and sharing your story.
All right, John. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode today with Keith Bauer. It's always great to have a guest on with a positive story. And I've had a lot on over the many episodes I've done with both positive stories like Keith's today, and we've had several great ones recently on these last few episodes. But, I've also had some sad stories, some stories of struggle. So I always enjoy, and it was great talking with Keith, hearing really everything that he'd been through and the success he's having right now, owning his own business and working to help other people, other addicts, other people struggling with addiction, alcoholism, things like that, to add value, contribute to society by working for his business, working for his company. So that's great. That is great to see. And, one of the things that I hope to accomplish with this show, that I hope to accomplish with Felony Friday, is for people who find this, maybe they stumble upon it on YouTube, maybe they find it when they're scrolling through their Apple Podcast or Google Podcasts or whatever, and they find this show. Maybe they're struggling with addiction. Maybe they have a problem, and they find someone like Keith Bauer, who has been through these struggles and is having success today. So just a shining example. And, through doing this show, through campaigning for libertarian candidates, through working as Dale Curran's campaign manager, I come across a lot of people on the internet who have some very not so friendly things to say about addicts, about drug addicts, about alcoholics, about people like that, people who've gone through, are currently going through those struggles. And I like to point to stories like Keith, and putting really the libertarian principles aside, where obviously as libertarians, we know the principle that you own your body and you can ingest whatever you want to in your body. Not to say that we advise everyone do this, don't abuse your own body. We're not advocating for that. But the point of me going down this road is to say that, there's this throwaway culture, especially the older people on the right, older conservatives, who just get rid of the addicts. We don't need them. Let them rot away in jail. That's insane. And that is really not a empathetic way to look at this, and not really even the most economic way, the most valuable way to look at this. Anybody should want, all human beings should want other humans to be successful, drive success, and help to add value to both their own life and to others' lives. That should be the ultimate goal. So that's why I love having people like Keith on, to really be that shining example. This is exactly what anyone can become, no matter what struggles you've had in the past. So thank you to Keith for coming on. A couple more notes. You can be a supporter of this show. You can help us grow larger, reach a wider audience. You can join the Lions of Liberty Pride by going to patreon.com/support. And you can be a Pride member, and for as little as $5 per month, you get access to all our bonus content. If you want to get some merchandise, like the shirt I'm wearing here today, which is showing backwards, I think. People watching on YouTube, maybe not, but it says "No victim, no crime, no victim, no time." It is the Felony Friday shirt, the Felony Friday shirt, and you can find it. You can either buy this shirt itself at lionsofliberty.store, or by joining the Pride for $10 and up, you get some free merchandise with your Pride membership, and you can get this shirt that way as well. So check that out, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. That's all I got, guys. Thank you so much for listening. It's another great show today, another great guest. So this is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.